بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد.
Welcome to Islamic Civilization, a course in the history of Islam, but not only the history of Islam, the religion of Islam, the faith of Islam, Islamic beliefs, Islamic practices, society, culture, civilization, the whole spectrum of what would be covered in any civilization. So this would be a course, one semester course, and by the end of this one semester course, you would know a lot about Islam. You would feel very enlightened about Islam, and next time when somebody talks about Islam, you could definitely correct them and give them the right perspective on Islam. So this course would not only talk about Islam, but also what is not Islam, and which also goes under the name of Islam. So you would see for yourself how much you will gain out of this course. And where we would start, let's see what is there in this course. This is session 1 right now, and this would be introduction. It introduces you to the whole spectrum of the course, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And some of the stuff later on that we would talk about would be the syllabus, would also be the structure of the course, what things there are, in terms of the assignments, the requirements. And whenever you need any help, please let me know. You have my email. You have the Lavlima site for this class, and you could have, later on when you look at the syllabus, you will have my office and my phone number. So please, contact me as much as you want to, and you can see me in my office, or you can just call me or email me, and we would, get in touch. So let's see what is there in this course. We'll start with the fundamental question: why to study Islamic civilization? And the reason are very simple. Number one, Islam is the second religion in the world, as well as in the United States, and still very fastly growing in the United States. So that is reason number one, a major world religion, Islam, very quickly and fastly spreading in the United States. And because after 9/11, Islam has started its own controversy in the heads and hearts of people, in the minds and hearts of people, and so it is very relevant to people in the United States, and they should know about it. So that's why, sometime you would see in the shopping mall or in your, immediate neighborhood Muslims, and, people have reacted very differently. For the most part positively, but there have been negative reactions, to Islam and Muslims in the United States. Soon after 9/11, there were people who were killed by Americans who were not even those people who got killed were not even Muslims, but they look like Muslims. So, those people, especially in California, they believe that these were, Muslims, and they killed them, even if they killed, non-Muslims. So that's why, it's important to know. It's always very powerful to have knowledge and speak on the basis and act and think on the basis of the right knowledge. So that's why this course is important and very relevant to the life of, common Americans and United States at large. Okay, let's see what else. The birthplace of Islam was the Middle East, which is still there, with all the good things and the bad things, the prospect and the problems for the United States foreign, policy, especially oil, which is also linked to, our daily life, without which we cannot even move. So the oil is there. The Palestinian and Israeli conflict, that is also a major issue in United States, especially, U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, because Middle East is very much involved in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Also, just recently, the Arab Spring Revolution that started, from Tunisia and went to Gaddafi, to Libya, to Egypt, and now in, in Syria, and who knows, what would be next. So these Arab Spring Revolutions, as they are called, very important for U.S. foreign policy. You should not be surprised that all these three major points, the oil, Israel, and the Arab revolutions, they are very important, very critical to the safety and security of United States. So we're talking also in terms of the American national security involved with the Middle East. And, for better or for worse, that is the reality of American foreign policy, American security. And so 9/11 itself, a major event in the history, modern history of the 20th century history of United States. So that's the reason we need to talk about in the 21st century still, it started with a big, event, tragic event of September 11, 2001. And so we need to find out, the truth about the Middle East, the truth about Islam, is its interaction with other religions, with other races, with other regions, and that is what you will have in this course. So in terms of the course introduction, we would have also a lot of art and architecture that Islam or Muslims produced, and sometimes non-Muslims produced under Islamic rule. And so you would have a lot of images that would go with the story in this course. We would definitely start with the geohistorical setting of Islam in the Arabian Peninsula. That is also important. The role that simple geography of Arabian Peninsula played in the spread of Islam and in the rise of Islam, you will see that the role of geography. The geographical significance of the Middle East, right there. How important is Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia in the middle. If you go further west, you get into Egypt, a great civilization, ancient civilization. If you go right and north, you would get into Iraq, another major civilization. Further, north and northwest, you get into Greece and Italy and into Europe, and further east, you get into Iraq, Iran, India, and China. So this civilization, even though this religion started in the Middle East, in the Arabian Peninsula, in the twin cities of Mecca and Medina, but it went from, the spread very quickly. It spread very quickly from Syria and to Spain, and then from, further east to Persia, Iran, to India, and to Egypt. So that's why when you look at the periphery of the Middle East, it's huge and big, a lot of people, population, and that would just tell you the one fact that there are more Muslims in the world who are non-Arab. Arab Muslims constitute less than 20% of the worldwide Muslim population. And some people might tell you there are more Muslims in the United States than in the birthplace of Islam in Saudi Arabia. Depending on which demography you are using, census you are using. So there are, 80% Muslims who are non-Arab. There are more, Indians, and there are, millions of Muslims in China. So that's the reason that we need to talk about all these places, that Islam brought under its fold, its banner, or the Arabs introduced Islam to different people. Also, there is a sort of a misperception that the Arabs, imposed Islam everywhere. That's not really true. They might have taken, just in groups. They went to one place or another place, and then they, left it to the rest of the population to adopt it and further spread it. And that's how, Islam spread so widely and so quickly, because of the people just coming into it and then taking it, in big pieces. And so that's a very interesting point that we would make again and again in this course. The pre-Islamic Arabia that we would talk about, and here you would see the society and the religion that existed before Islam in the Middle East. Here you have a gentleman sitting here on the chair. This is definitely an Arab. But on the left, here is a Zoroastrian person from Iran, and still further left you have a Jewish person from the Middle East, and further left you have a Chinese person. Whether Muslim or not, that's a different issue, but you have him, in the picture. And the reason is simple, that how much this place was and still is very diverse. So far races, ethnic groups are concerned, languages, are concerned. So you have a huge big diversity in the Middle East, and that makes it more interesting, whether that is Islam or Christianity or Judaism in the region. So you would see different races, and different religions coming together in Islam or under Islam, especially in the, wherever there was the Islamic rule. There were different people of diverse races. Not all of them were Muslims. Some of them, stayed in their previous religions, and a lot of them converted to the new religion of Islam. So that's what the point that I'm making: the diversity of the racial, the ethnic, the linguistic, the religious, and the social diversity that existed before Islam in Arabia. We would also talk about the Jahiliyyah period, which is usually called the age of ignorance, that existed before Islam in not only just Arabia, but also in different parts of the Middle East. So here you have a god that was very popular in the Middle East. Here on the left you have the image of a Queen of Sheba, the wife or consort, so to speak, of King Solomon. So you have a lot of diversity in the Arabian Peninsula and the adjoining region of the peninsula. So we would talk about all this life that existed before Islam. How was it? Also, there would be something to the effect like what were some of the things that existed before Islam and went and helped Islam spread in the region. So how Islam adopted some of the best things that pre-existed, and what were some of those things that Islam did not like, some of the immorality, so to speak, or the wrong things, the unjust things that Islam put an end to and moved on with its own system, social system, economic system, and justice. So we would also talk about how Islam made itself by or through the existing socioeconomic structures, and how Islam brought about certain changes in the systems, different systems, social, economic, or political. And so that would also make the this course very interesting, I hope, and you would see for yourself some of the changes that Islam brought about. Also, you will see the socioeconomic changes that Islam brought about, and how much these changes were based on the Arabs themselves coming in contact with different ethnic groups, different linguistic groups that pre-existed, as I say, before Islam, especially the Egyptian, the two major civilizations of Europe, Greece and Rome, and then the ancient civilization of Iraq, Persia, India, and China. So you would see how much Islam, or for that reason Africa at large, how much Islam was changed, or it was made by other groups of people who brought their own wisdom, their own cultures, their own languages, and centuries and thousands years old, science and technology, and enriched Islam and helped Islam spread all the way from Syria in the west to China in the east. And if you look at it, that's a very huge, big area. Also, the spread was very quick. No religion in the world history spread as quickly as Islam did. And you would see the reasons, why it spread so quickly. Was it the sword, or was it something else? Or was it the willing, sort of a coming together of the people in under the banner of Islam, and why they did, what they did. So you would have different reasons, regarding the spread of Islam, but keep in mind the role of geography, the role of the pre-existing societies, cultures, languages, art, and sciences that came and enriched Muslims and their religion, Islam. At this point, as what we talked about, I might ask you, for an assignment, and that would be as simple an assignment as like, compare and contrast the geography of the Arabian Peninsula to that of Egypt or India. For a simple reason, we spend so much time on, geography, and it would be good time for you to spend some time and write somewhere between, 100 and 200 words. Write a simple personal reaction, so to speak, in which you don't tell me what I told you, because I know what I told you, but you tell me what you think of it. That is more important. I know what I told you, so please do not summarize my lecture for me. What you should do is write your honest personal views, opinions, perspective, and put the whole thing into, sort of a contemporary ethical issue from that perspective. See some ethics in it, what happened, why it happened. And so that should be your reaction report. So there you would have a couple of other reaction reports depending on, the session, how big, or small the session is. I would throw in these different assignments. So this would be sort of, an example of an assignment that I might ask you to complete, and so the syllabus would talk about that too. The syllabus and the sessions would go hand in hand. Okay, let's see what else do we have. We will talk about the rise of Islam from Mecca, and how from that oasis town Mecca it would spread to different regions. So you would see the role of Mecca and Medina and other towns and cities in the presentation. Also the rise of Islam based on, the first revelations that came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When I say this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is Arabic. For the English meaning would be simple: peace and blessing of God be upon him. So I would say these things, being a Muslim, I would say these phrases with the names of the prophets, like Jesus. I would say alayhi salam, peace be upon him; Moses, Abraham, peace be upon them all, alayhi salam. And the Prophet of Islam, I would say these phrases. This is for, to show respect and reverence to those great people, great prophets who help humanity in different ways. And so being a Muslim, I would say these, do not, worry. These are not some strange messages. These are just simple, Arabic phrases, which means peace and blessing of God be upon these different prophets that we would talk about in this session, in this course on Islamic civilization. Okay, let's see. What else do we have? The rise of Islam from the mountain of Jabal Nur in Mecca. And I would show you some picture that when I went there, I took, those pictures. Also, we would talk about and we, very deeply about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet of Islam, how he started his prophetic and mission. Here at the outset, I should tell you, if you look at, we have blurred the face of the Prophet, and for simple reason, because we want to show our respect to those Muslims who do not want to show the face of the Prophet. This would be also true in this Islamic course whenever there is an image of Moses or Jesus, although some people have drawn their images, we won't show, or in some cases we might show to make the point. and the reason for not showing is very simple, because we do not know how they look like, especially in case of the Prophet Muhammad, the sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet of Islam, because we don't know how he looked like. Some of these prophets, they were not, kings or great, very wealthy, rich people who made their images while they were still alive. So that's the reason we really do not know how they look like. And to some people, they're very offensive, so we stay clean, of all the controversies and the offenses, and we do not want to offend anyone. So that's why we would stay, clean of all these controversies. Okay, staying with the Prophet Muhammad, we would talk about the first revelations that went into the making of Quran, the messages that he received, and how Quran was composed. That would be also part of the Islamic civilization. Speaking of Quran, right there you see a modern copy, so to speak. There are ancient copies. I really somehow, maybe because I'm in history, I like some of the older copies of the Quran. And, even, some of them have been preserved in different museums. And people just go to those museums just for the sake of looking at those Qurans that were written in 13th century, 14th century, and they're just amazing. And some of them are really, truly, the product of love that the artist showed. And Quran also inspired calligraphy in Arabic and other different languages also, but especially in Arabic. And boy, you would love to see those Qurans that were written, in a very devotional way in calligraphy, and that calligraphy was taken really to heights. And that calligraphy itself became an art, not only just on the paper writing the Quran, but also on the walls. Walls were filled with Quranic verses, not only for the blessing, but also to beautify the place with writing Quranic verses in Arabic. So that's also, part of the art that we would show you about Quran. And of course, the main content of the Quran and how Quran shapes, even this day, the lives of the people. And so you would see a lot from the Quran also. And I encourage you to have your personal copy of the Quran. There are so many English translations. Definitely in the syllabus, I would mention one, and there'd be, simple English and very popular that I use myself. Okay. Speaking of the rise of Islam, you would see a lot of images of the mosques, which is, a central piece of place of worship in Islam, just like a church is to Christianity, synagogue is to Judaism, a mosque is to Islam. Staying with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would see his early life, how he was perceived even in Mecca, that he was a peacemaker. But the same peacemaker was forced to leave the town, and he struggled with the people when he started, the message that he was supposed to give to the people, how he was persecuted, how his fellow Muslims, early converts to Islam, were persecuted, and how they were, forced out of their towns, and they had to migrate for safety reason, not just only to spread Islam, but also for their own safety and protection. They had to go to one place or another place. Speaking of the migration, Muslim migration, very important topic, an event in the history of Islam, how Muslims went from one place to another place, what it did to the Muslim, and what Muslim did with this migration. So migration, a very important point in the history of Islam. You would see it for yourself that it is the central, in the early history of Islam, at least, a central point, migration, or hijrah as it is called. Based on this migration from Mecca, one town, to another town in the same Saudi Arabia, to another town, Medina, it changed Islam. And Islam changed people with that one migration, one movement of the people. It spread very quickly. It invited other people, and other people joined, Islam not so much in Mecca, but outside Mecca. Also, migration made the Islamic calendar, a lunar calendar based on the, the motion of the moon, the first moon and the middle and the end of the one moon and the beginning of the other moon. That also gave Islam a calendar, but it is also based on migration, the first event of migration. So we will talk about that. Also, here at this point, I could ask you for another reaction report, and that would be simple what we covered, previously. And so we would write, I might ask you to write, a note on the life of Muhammad in Mecca, just simple, in 100, 200 words, and that would be it. So keep in touch with the session, keep in touch with the different sections of the sessions in the same class, okay? So this assignment, very simple, but again, I must tell you, I really want your reaction, your opinion, your views, your perspectives on what we covered in these different sessions. So that is more important. Please do not summarize the lecture for me. I want your thoughts, not my summarized lecture. So I hope it's clear, and more, if you are not, then go to the syllabus or call me or email me, and we can, talk about, how to write these simple reaction reports. Okay, let's see further. Staying with Muhammad, how Muhammad, when he migrated and went to Medina, what happened there? How he was, considered to be himself a great peacemaker, a great statesman, how he created the first charter or constitution of Medina. That's very important. How Muhammad became a lawgiver, a statesman. Why he had to take up this role, sort of a political role. Any prophet, that's not just Muhammad, but a lot of prophets, they took these, adopted, even if they didn't want to, they adopted these roles of politicians and got involved in the politics of the day. So we will talk about that also. The new Muslims that came to Islam, what they did to Islam and what Islam did to them. So we will talk about the role of the converts, how they got converted to Islam. Also, we will talk about the conquest of Mecca from Medina, the first major conquest of Islam, and what it did to the people of Mecca, how it protected people, this conquest. So there would be a lot of these events, historical events, based on proof, based on documents, resources that we would talk about, and you would see a huge big difference how Islam approached war, peace, the treatment of the enemy very humanely, even the humane treatment of the prisoners and the dead bodies of the enemy, how Muslims treated the environment, the natural resources of the enemy. So this would be a major part in one of the sections of these lecture series, and so that's why it's important for you to keep in touch, very involved, and this would be like again and again we would come to it, again and again we would come to some of the major factors. You might feel a little bit something like you think it's a repetition, but it would be good repetition for you because it would happen in another place, another period, and among other people, and you would see definitely the diversity and the interesting part of it. Okay, let's see further. Still staying with Muhammad, the Arabia at his death. What happened to the Arabian Peninsula on the death of Muhammad? What it did to the people, what it did to Islam itself. Okay. Also, on the death of Muhammad, what were these Islamic beliefs and practices that he established? That is important. The sources of the Islamic law called the Sharia, how that was put together in the life of Muhammad, very important. The Quran and Hadith that came together, not so much, well, they were there. Quran is the word of God that Muhammad received, and Hadith is the word of Muhammad himself or the works of Muhammad himself, and how they were put together. That would be also a major session that we would talk about, because these two sources of Islam, the Quran and Hadith, very important for simple reason. Even today, they shape the lives of millions and millions of Muslims. There are, some of the things that are very controversial about how the Quran and Hadith are put into practice. And some people might say imposed upon other people the Islamic religious law, the Sharia, and how people react to Sharia. Rightly or wrongly, we would see that also. You would see some of the things that based are completely ignorance, honestly. Lack of education, lack of enlightenment about the Quran and Hadith. And why some people, adopt that lifestyle of the Quran and Hadith, and what it does to the people who adopt, that lifestyle based on the Quran and Hadith. So it's a major session in the history of Islamic civilization. Okay, let's see further. Still staying with Muhammad, Islamic belief and practices I talked, the completed, how they were completed in the time of Prophet Muhammad, Islamic practices and beliefs. If anything, we would talk about also, as I said, the major sources of Islam, Quran and Hadith. Again and again, we would refer to it. So, and by the end of, hopefully, this course, you would know a lot about the Quran and Hadith and how they, impact life, Muslim life in general, and what it might have for you. In some cases, you would see that you don't have to be a Muslim to get some wisdom from the Quran and Hadith. Even for a daily common, things that we do in our lives, how much one would benefit even as a non-Muslim from some of the teachings and the wisdom of Quran and Hadith, and that should, make it also very interesting. The idea is not to convert you, okay? That's for sure. This course is not, meant to convert people. What it is, it's meant to enlighten people, to educate people, to give them the power of knowledge, as I would say again and again. Okay. Here also, I could ask you, to write another reaction report based on the life of Muhammad in Medina, again, in simple words, from 100 to 200 words. And so you would have these assignments, very important assignments. As I said, they would keep you in touch. Okay, let's see what else do we have. Islamic beliefs, belief in Allah, God, the angels, the books, the previous books, the Quran and, the books that came before, the different messengers that were there, and life in the hereafter, the last day of judgment. So these simple beliefs, Islamic beliefs, would be one session. In some of these beliefs, you would find it, similar to what you have in your own religion, and some of them would be, different, but you might see the idea may be the same. So how much there is a common ground between Islamic beliefs and Jewish belief or Christian belief. These would be the two other religions that we would refer to, for sake of background, for the sake of compare, not so much contrast, but, also contrast would be there definitely, but as a background. So we would talk about these Islamic beliefs in the light or in the background of other religious beliefs. Okay. Beside the beliefs, we would talk about Islamic practices, the Shahada, the affirmation of Islamic belief, the prayers, the fasting, the charity, and the pilgrimage. Very important 5 practices, Islamic practices that make a Muslim Muslim when they practice. Or, some would say that you don't have to be practicing all or any one of them to be a Muslim, and still you could be a Muslim. So those are, some of the controversies that we would also talk about. Here the Islamic practices, the Shahada, the affirmation of Islam, it's a simple, line La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, which simply means there is no God, except Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. So I would give you also a lot of Arabic phrases and Arabic itself, the calligraphy, that you would enjoy in this course. We will talk about Islamic practices, the first and foremost, the prayer. We will talk about the different times of Islamic prayers. In the morning, why in the morning, why in the afternoon, similarly late afternoon, sunset, and the last one in the evening. So what's the logic behind different timings of the prayers? So that's also important. That is also important. Okay, staying with the Islamic practices, we will talk about the pilgrimage. Hopefully I can share my own picture with you when I went there in 2008. So, and how these pilgrimages are still conducted. Very important when it comes to Islamic practices, the pilgrimage. Okay, let's see what else do we have. We have the Sharia, the Islamic law. That would be a main theme, in these sessions. The sources of the Islamic Sharia, the Quran and Hadith, that we would refer to it again and again. Another new terminology, ijtihad and ijma. The reinterpretation or interpretation of the Islamic sources of Quran and Hadith, and the ijma, the consents of a fatwa or declaration or sort of decree, legal opinion in Islam. So these are some of the technical terminologies, but you will get it because we will talk about them. Let's see further what we have in the slides. We'll talk about, as I said, the Islamic Sharia, and here you have it. The Islamic Sharia becoming very controversial, at the time of this Ground Zero mosque in New York, and how it became a big controversy and a problem. And so that's also very important. So what it would do, it would bring Islam and make it part of the American life, and would make it much more contemporary, even though we're talking about, times that went by around 1400 years ago, this religion, Islam, was put together. And so how much this old religion is still, intact and still impacts upon the lives and societies and cultures of the people around the world, some in very positive way, other might see it negative, and so we would talk about both the positive and the negative perspective of the people, how they perceive and why they perceive it so. That is also important. But keep in mind one thing, and again I would say, repeating myself again and again, and that is, knowledge is really power. And you will get quite some knowledge in this Islamic, course, Islamic civilization, that would give you power. And next time when you see whatever you see, about a Muslim, about Islam, you would have a very positive and a very different reaction or perspective on things, because you would be talking about based on knowledge, which I say is power. It empowers you, and you would see that empowerment of yourself about this major world religion, the second largest in the world, the second largest itself in the United States itself. So that's why you need this course, and you would enjoy. It's a very interesting course. We'll see. Okay, let's see further. We will talk about the role of Islamic madrasas, or theological seminaries, that also became very controversial. And what happens in these Islamic theological seminaries, because some of these seminaries produced a group of people that go under the name of Taliban, and how the Taliban took advantage of the seminaries and, what they did to them. So that's why we would talk about those controversial places and perspectives. Islamic schools of jurisprudence, different jurisprudence schools that we have in Islam, we would also talk about, and how they impact on the lives of Muslims almost on a daily basis, how it creates diversity or even the difference of opinion in Islam, and what happens. So there would be sort of the diversity point about Islam. Caliphs, we would talk about those also. The successors of Muhammad, soon after Muhammad died, they were elected or appointed the first four caliphs, whose total lifespan or rule ranged from 632 to 661. Not a long time, but for the four caliphs that ruled, it's not a long time, and the reason was simple. Their lives were short because three of the four were killed, and that is how we would talk about the first civil war among Muslims, and how that first civil war led to the rise of a schism, a sectarian divide between Muslims based on what we call the Sunni and Shia schism. Okay, talking about the Shia and Sunni schism, right there, you have the image of the Prophet and the image of Ali, again blurred, and for good reasons, as I told you before. So we would talk about how the Shia sectarian group of Muslim perceive their sectarian group or their own development sort of the religious practices, their own development of the religious institutions, their own perception of history, what happened, and that also creates a very big difference in the resources, the use of the resources, the use of the documents. In the history of Islam, just like you have in Christianity, the difference between Catholics and non-Catholics denominations of Christianity. Similarly, in Islam, you have the Sunni and the Shia. And where one is minority and the other is majority, that also impacts in that country its politics, its society, its economy, and its relation with the next door neighbors. It even impacts the political policies and the foreign policies of other European powers, including the United States. Who is Sunni and who is Shia, and who is doing what? That impacts upon the foreign policy of United States, and in a way critical also to the American national security. So we will talk about those interesting things. Sectarianism, although not really, in any religion people would like to stay united, but that's not the reality. The reality is division. So we talk about those division. Okay. Staying with the Shia-Sunni schism, here is a beautiful, calligraphy, and how this one word, Ali Waliullah, or this phrase creates sort of sometimes even panic among the Sunni Muslims, and why this was adopted and what it does. So we will talk about these interesting major features of the Sunni-Shia divide. Here also you have an image of, this is in Arabic written Muhammad, but the upside down image of this is sort of Ali, and what it means in the life of the Sunni and the Shia, and how Shia Muslim developed their own sort of sectarian theology and their different history, or the notion of history, and especially politics, the political leadership, how it came about, especially among the Shia. So we would talk about that, even though, as I said, Shia are the minority, but still a very important minority, and we would talk about that. So we are not afraid of talking, controversies. We would jump into it, but based again, respect based on resources that we have, the documents that we have. So we won't, offend anyone. We would just see what it is in the documents, in the history, and how it impacts life among Muslims even these days. Okay. Still going further, the rise of dynasties, the different caliphates that started, the Umayyad that ruled Syria and Spain. We would talk about a very dynamic dynasty called the Abbasid dynasty that ruled Iran and Iraq. And so different dynastic family rules, we would talk about that also. Very important. The spread of Islam, that these dynasties, took to different places. What were the reason and what were the resources behind the spread of Islam? Those old empires that pre-existed before the rise of Islam, the Greek Byzantine Empire and the Iranian Sassanid Empire, very important empires. Non-Muslim, one Greek, the other Persian. And so we would talk about also those ones, where did they go wrong and made it possible for for people to convert to Islam. We would also talk about the new Arab Muslim energies that different Muslims brought to the spread of Islam. That's also a major theme in this course. How non-Arabs went ahead with Islam and spread Islam in different ways, through, of course, the sword, if there was the need for the sword, but also through trade and business. That's also important to look at it. Where it went through the sword and warfare, that would be also clear, and where it went through the economic interaction, the business, the trade interaction between Muslims and non-Muslim, and how non-Muslims in huge big numbers, for example, in Malaysia and Indonesia. In fact, Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the Muslim world, how they embraced Islam without a single fight. So we will talk about also those reasons and resources of the spread of Islam. Let's see further. We will talk about the spread of Islam in different directions. We will identify the place and the period and the people where Islam spread and how they brought their different cultures. We would also talk about, so for the people, different people are concerned, Europeans and their encounters with Muslims in Spain, in Italy, Greece, and in the Holy Land. So that would be also a major topic. Speaking of encounters, we would talk about the Crusades, very controversial, topic, but as I said, we would jump into it. In the Crusades, what they did, the Crusades did to Muslims and the Europeans, how much there was this interaction between the two after the conflict, and how the Crusade changed the Middle East or the Middle Eastern perception of European people and Christianity itself. We'll also talk about Mongols, another group of people that came in contact, especially in conflict with the Muslims. Mongols in 1258, they destroyed the greatest place in Islam, like Baghdad, which is in modern day Iraq, in ancient Mesopotamia, or as we call it now, Iraq, how Mongols destroyed Iraq. And interestingly, after that destruction, how Mongols, not all of them of course, but some of them converted to Islam. That's also a strange phenomena that took place at that time in the middle of the 13th and in the first half of 14th century. So we will talk about the Mongol and Muslim interaction. The rise of the different Muslim empires, very interesting. The Ottomans in Turkey, the Mughals in India, and the Safavid in Iran. Three different places speaking different languages and creating Muslim empires. There would be the only thing that would be common to these three places, Turkey, India, and Iran, and these empires would be their faith of Islam and how they would spread Islam further in their regions. The Ottoman Empire, especially because Ottoman Empire came in contact with Europeans. That's very important. So we will bring the Ottoman Empire and their European contact not only with the Europeans and how Islam was spread by the Ottomans in Eastern Europe, that now we call it the Balkans, like Albania, Macedonia, Kosovo, Bosnia. So some of these places that we would talk about, and they made big news, in the after the fall of communism in 1990s, big news, and a lot of it tragic. What non-Muslims, especially in Serbia, did to the Muslim neighbors who lived, for almost 70, 80 years under, 70 years under communism, and before that, for centuries, they lived together under the Ottomans, very peacefully, relatively peacefully compared to what they did after the fall of communism. So we would talk about those. So what would happen in this course is we would go from the present to the past and from the present to, the past. Let me rephrase it. From the present to the past and from the present to from the past to the present. I think I got it right now. So this is what we would talk about. We would go back and forth. What happened 1400 years ago, 800 years ago, and how impacted people in the present century, and how some of these things went directly to 800 and 1400 years back and created that mindset that, in some cases ruined the lives of the people in the 20th century and even in the 21st century. So we will talk about those things, what the empires did. Okay, let's see further. As I said, we will talk about the Ottoman Empire, then we will talk about the Mughal Empire that gave us the Taj Mahal in India, and what happened to India itself under the Mughal Empire. Also, we will talk about the Safavid Empire, huge and big, based in Iran, of course, and what this Safavid Empire did, not so much in political terms in the region, but also in terms of the arts and architecture. That's what the Safavid are known for. And so, till this day, how they shape or unshape politics and society in Iran, the Safavid Empire. We'll talk about the Muslim societies, the laws that govern Muslim societies. I'm showing you, a beautiful image of a beautiful mosque in Turkey, but how the societies, Muslim society, lived under the Islamic laws. What was the role of the family, especially the relationship between parents and children, between husband and wife? Very important topic. Gender issues that we would talk about definitely in this course, and how they till this day, impact on the society itself. Men versus women, so to speak, what happens in the gender issues, not only just between husband and wife, but also men and women in the society at large. We would also talk about the Muslim societies under class structures, economic issues between the rich and the poor Muslims, between religious minorities, Jews, Christian, and Zoroastrians, the three major groups of people, beside the Hindus as well as the Buddhist in India particularly, but mostly in the Middle East, how much there was sort of an interaction between Muslim, Jews, and Christians, and what that interaction, to what extent it impacted upon the lives of the three. So definitely you would have one group of the people, majority, and the other would be minority, and how that majority and minority would balance themselves in a given place, in a given period, and among given people. So we would definitely talk about the role of the minorities in Islam, whether they be Jews, Christians, Zoroastrian, Hindus, or Sikh or Buddhist, especially in India. Okay, let's see further. We talk about also science, medicine, technology that different Muslim created, Muslim scientists, Muslim societies, very interesting topic, and some of them were still the beneficiaries of those scientific achievements. Definitely we'll talk about Muslim art and architecture, which is again very interesting feature of the Islamic civilization, and what civilization would be civilization without art and architecture, and that would be true of Islamic civilization. We will talk about Islamic philosophy. I think I'm leaving the best for the last. Islamic philosophy, a difficult topic, though a difficult topic, but we will survive, and I'll try my best to make it easy and easily understandable, and that's the reason. But that's where we would talk about Islamic philosophy, especially when it is applicable in our own modern life. And that's where I said that we would jump between the present and the past. And so when we say Islamic philosophy, it would not be just a dry philosophy. It would be definitely a very interesting philosophy, because these philosophies, Islamic philosophies, that sometimes themselves were the product of the previous philosophies that existed in the region, especially Greek philosophy, Persian philosophy, and Indian philosophy, and how they impacted and created what we can easily call Islamic philosophy and Islamic philosophers. So that's what we would talk about. Okay. Now, a major theme in this course, of course, for you, especially the syllabus. Very important Please use the syllabus as much as you can on a daily basis, weekly basis, because it gives you not only the schedule of the class, but also gives you the mechanics of the class. So please read the syllabus instructions for weekly test, multiple choice, whether they would multiple choice test or essay based. We will see that. So please check the syllabus. Also, the study questions, very important. The study question that you would have on the textbook chapters, and they would be placed for you on the Laulima site for this class. So that's also very important. The TV lecture series that we have, very important. What role they play, in this course, besides just giving you information, and what assignments have been structured around the TV lecture sessions. There would be definitely a midterm and final test, the two of them, one after another. The midterm would be in the middle of the course, in the middle of semester. The final would be at the end of semester. And so that also would be a big theme in the syllabus. Staying with the syllabus, please read the syllabus instructions for the weekly assignments and the reaction reports. That's very important. What you need to write about the TV lecture sessions, that would be also in the assignment and in the syllabus. I would alert you to them in the presentation, but also I would alert you in the syllabus. There would be one big book report or book summary. I would give you instructions on those one on the second textbook that we would use for this class. So please keep in touch. Okay, regarding the syllabus, use the syllabus. There would be some other, paperwork, I would call it now. Paperwork that would let you know what is due when and how to do it. You would be never without guidance in this class. Definitely there would be a lot of instruction for you. If there's anything in the syllabus is not clear, just let me know. You are one click or one email or one phone away from me, or you could come to my office, So, and that also the phone number, the email, and the office number is listed in the syllabus. So please use the syllabus. And as I said, keep in touch, stay engaged, and that is not the way to stay engaged. Okay, be alert in the session, and take as much notes as you can. That would be good for you. Very good, because on these notes you would build your reaction reports. So that's why you need to stay engaged. Yes, just like this. Be happy and nothing would go wrong. Believe me, if you stay engaged with this course, you will get a lot of stuff out of this course. Again, going back to the syllabus, if you need extra credit assignment, so that's a question, and if you do, submit the first extra credit assignment. Okay, that would be a written assignment number 1. Then take the first extra credit, the multiple choice question test, and how and where. For that, you need to read the syllabus. And that is, I really don't know how to emphasize the importance of the syllabus. So please keep in touch with me, with the syllabus, with the course, with the textbook, with the assignments, and you would be fine. If anything, you need me anytime, just email me, and you would be surprised that you can email me not at 3 in the morning, but at least, as late as maybe 9:30 p.m. or 10 o'clock. If I have drunk too much coffee, maybe 12 o'clock, midnight. But don't try, as late as that. The more you check your messages from me, that would be very good for both of us. We would keep in touch through the messages, through the email, phone call, or you just come, drop by my office, and we would keep in touch. And I hope you would enjoy this course as much, as you learn. I would enjoy as much as teaching it. So aloha, thank you very much.
بسم الله